tên của ai đằng sau tấm màn thưa.
Enough.
Ý lù lù. Ok, nghe. Xin chào, hôm nay là ngày 5 tháng 6 2024. Thì cách đây khoảng 15 phút 20 phút thôi thì bởi vì mình có để tiền vào chứng khoán ấy, nên là 15 20 phút trước mình có check tài khoản thì mình bị bất ngờ, bởi vì là mình có để tiền vào cái quỹ của Vina Capital. Quỹ đấy là quỹ VMEEF. Thì quỹ đấy mình mới phát hiện ra, mới tìm ra hơn một tháng trước. Thì mình thấy tự nó performance nó tốt quá nên là để mình, thế là mình vứt một ít tiền vào. Đúng nghĩa là vứt một ít tiền vào vì mình cũng không có tìm hiểu gì. Bây giờ đơn giản là nó là quỹ của một công ty uy tín mà mình đã đầu tư vào rất là nhiều rồi, cho nên là mình cứ vứt đại vào thôi. Thì mới được mình mở ra app ra thì mới được hơn một tháng, thì mình cũng đầu tư đều đặn đấy. Nhưng mà mình nhớ là 1-2 hôm trước mình mở ra xem thì cái quỹ đấy mình được cộng 3%. Thế từ từ hôm nay mình mở ra thấy cộng 8%. Thế mình mới bất ngờ, mà hay là mình nhớ nhầm. Thì mình mở ra so thì đúng thật là hôm nay ngày mùng 5, và so với ngày 30 ấy, mà thế là đã bao gồm 2 ngày nghỉ rồi nhé. Ngày 30 thì mình có bỏ mấy triệu vào thì nó đã tăng 5% rồi. Thế mình mới, tại sao? Thế mình mới lên trên tài liệu quỹ xem là quỹ nó đang cầm những cổ phiếu nào, để tìm ra nguyên nhân là tại sao nó tăng như vậy. Thì cái cổ phiếu thứ hai ấy, cổ phiếu gọi là chiếm tỷ trọng lớn thứ hai của VMEF là FPT, rất giống tất cả những cái quỹ khác, nhưng mà cổ phiếu đầu đứng, nhưng mà cổ phiếu chiếm tỷ trọng đầu tiên đó là một cái tên rất là lạ, là FOX Fox. Và mình check thì hóa ra là Fox này là nó tên là công ty cổ phần viễn đông gì đấy, cái gì viễn thông thì công ty cổ phần viễn thông FPT, nhưng mà ở sàn Upcom. Và đúng là chính là cái app này, chính là cái cái Fox này chính là cái nguyên nhân khiến cho VMEF nó nhảy một cách ghê gớm như vậy. Trong vòng khoảng, đây mình đang cố gắng mở cái biểu đồ, mình đang cố gắng mở cái biểu đồ, nhưng mà mình đang cố gắng mở cái biểu đồ để thể hiện là cái cổ phiếu nó tăng như nào, nhưng mà đang mãi chưa lên. Vốn hóa công ty, bởi vì là cái công ty này là một công ty mình không biết là gì, nhưng mà mình đơn giản là thấy là sàn Upcom là một sàn rất là nhỏ, mình không bao giờ động vào. Mình chỉ đúng động vào HOSE thôi, thậm chí là chỉ động HOSE viên 30 rồi ấy. Nhưng mà tự dưng thêm một cái quỹ lớn, quỹ không phải quỹ lớn, quỹ cũng tầm trung đi, Mình cũng có check là tài sản quỹ này hiện tại khoảng hơn 300 tỷ. Quỹ tầm trung mà lại đầu tư một cái cổ phiếu mà ở sàn Upcom mà chỉ tỷ trọng rất là lớn thì mình khá bất ngờ. Ở đây thì mình chuyển màn. Không xem được. Bằng một phép thần kỳ như đấy mình nó không load mấy cái chart. Nhưng mà trong vòng một ngày đây này, mọi người có thể nhìn thấy trong vòng 5 ngày qua. Yeah. Đây. Một ngày thì tăng 83%, 5 ngày thì tăng 38%, 37,69%. Mình chưa chơi rõ là VMEEF này bắt đầu cầm cái FPT Fox này từ bao giờ. Nhưng mà đấy mới chỉ là giá, bởi vì là cái giá của quỹ thì sẽ thường delay một ngày. Nên là ví dụ hôm nay này, bởi vì mình xem hôm nay là có tăng rồi, nhưng mà nó chưa phản ánh lên giá của chứng chỉ quỹ thì cũng như là ngày mai khi mà báo cáo của quỹ ra thì cái nó tăng nhiều hơn nữa. Đây là một cái thông tin thú vị mà mình tìm được mình mới phát hiện ra trước khi live hôm nay thôi. Quay lại với cả buổi live hôm nay thì như hôm trước mình có nói, mình có xem, hôm nay sẽ tập trung xem cái này, một clip phỏng vấn Max Joseph. Nhưng Max Joseph này thì mình cũng thấy nhiều rồi, bởi vì mình đơn giản thôi, mình xem Casey Neistat và Casey nói rất là nhiều về Max. Còn Digital Spaghetti này, người phỏng vấn là CEO của Patreon. Patreon thì ai mà dùng YouTube thì có thể biết là Patreon là trang mà nói như nhỉ, nó kiểu OnlyFans ấy, kiểu OnlyFans, nhưng OnlyFans kiểu nghiêm túc. Còn ai mà không biết OnlyFans là gì thì mình cũng không biết giải thích như nào. Thôi, bắt đầu.
There's a black hole in my heart, and nothing can fill it up.
This scene started as a voice memo on...
And nothing... There's a black hole in my heart, and nothing can fill it up.
This scene started as a voice memo on Max Joseph's phone.
This is me doing my voiceover.
It's how Max builds most of his films, and this audio-first process gives him a unique voice that's influenced folks like Casey Neistat.
Hi, I'm Max. I work audio first.
You can tell the story with sound first, and then figure out the right visuals that complement that story.
Yeah.
Max's influence
Audio
on
first.
YouTube goes all the way back to 2007 when he...
Đây là, mặc dù mình biết Max rồi nhưng mình cũng trước giờ mình chưa tìm hiểu gì cả. Và cái thông tin vừa rồi cũng là cái thông tin mà lần đầu tiên mình được nghe. Lần đầu tiên mình được nghe về từ Max, cũng như là lần đầu tiên mình được nghe là một người edit video mà làm audio trước.
when he was making videos for Good Magazine, which got into Sundance and trudged a path for a new genre of online filmmaking.
I started on Final Cut 1. All of a sudden I was like, this is the best video game I've ever played.
He's made work for MTV, HBO, and even a feature film that stars Zac Efron. And of course, he edited the famous Casey video, Make It Count.
When I was working with Casey, he would say to me, oh man, that's so pleasing.
Max's documentaries on YouTube have gained millions of views, and he just released a new series on his channel called Happiness, which he premiered in LA earlier this month.
That's a children's playground in Santa Monica.
What? I sat down with Max to see if I could figure out where his unique voice and style comes from, and why he still loves coming back to YouTube to showcase his work.
That's awesome.
Max, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
We just released a video on the Digital Spaghetti YouTube channel where we watched a piece of work that you edited, and we did not credit you as an editor. And oh boy, do I feel shitty about that.
I forgive you.
Okay.
That is, by the way, the plight of the editor.
Yeah?
They do a lot of the work and they remain invisible and they don't often get the credit.
I feel like your impact on YouTube culture, filmmaking culture, has extended probably far more than people even know.
To some degree, I've seen it spread, but I'm not a big YouTuber.
Yeah.
You know, I've maybe posted.
Một cái fact đó là màu tóc của Max này không phải màu tóc thật. Nhưng mà bây giờ mình có thể search trên trên Google đúng không? Để tìm cái màu tóc thật của Max là gì. Và kết quả là gì? Không có. Đều là màu trắng hết. Vì sao? Đơn giản là anh ấy nhuộm tóc màu trắng bạch kim từ năm mình không nhớ, nếu mà mình nhớ không nhầm là từ năm 15 tuổi rồi. Luôn luôn là để tóc màu này. 15 tuổi đã tìm ra đã có được một thứ mà biết đấy, kiểu đã có một thứ mà biết chắc chắn và sẽ duy trì nó trong vòng 20 năm, 30 năm sau đấy.
Maybe post something like once a year.
Yeah.
But that's, recently that's changing.
With this series.
With this series.
Yeah. What is this series? What are we about to watch?
It's a doc series about happiness, and each episode is like a different deep dive into one aspect of happiness. Like one episode's about the philosophies around happiness. One episode's about achievement and success and how that relates to happiness. And another episode's about Scandinavia and why the hell they're so fucking happy. And it's kind of open-ended. Like it could keep on going.
So we're going to watch the first episode of this new series that right now when we're filming, it's not out yet.
It's very close to being done. It's just like the final touches are not quite on there yet. And I'll probably do them like the couple minutes before I hit upload.
Let's dive in.
All right, cool.
There's a black hole in my heart, and nothing can fill it up. I'm not quite sure how big it is, but no matter what I put into it, it's never enough to fill it up. I used to think that once I'd made it, once I fell in love and got married and achieved a certain level of success, then I'd be happy.
Cái ca mình hơi bị che. Okay.
Heart would be full. But I've had some achievements. And although my heart may be full for a couple days, I'll just wake up a week later feeling empty again. And I know that I'm not alone. It's no secret that everyone is struggling with their mental health.
The U.S. Surgeon General has called it an urgent public health crisis.
1 in 5 Americans will experience a mental illness in a given year.
Maybe we'd be better off understanding precisely what happiness is, so we can get better at experiencing it for ourselves. So I'm setting off on a journey around the world and through the mysteries of science to seek out world experts and figure out once and for all what happiness is all about.
This whole Charlie Chaplin style production, tell us about that choice. Like why that and how does that kind of weave in and out of this whole thing?
So it's a funny story. So I'd actually written a little, memo note to myself with this poem about the black hole in my heart. Knowing that I wanted to do something with that idea, I work audio first. I'll speak what I'm trying to say into my iPhone and I'll record it, and then I'll edit that and I'll find the right music to go along with that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's musical.
That actually makes so much sense now that that's what your process is.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, I think that order of operations is probably a lot of why it feels like you.
So I actually stumbled upon that process kind of accidentally in a moment of extreme stress and pressure. I was making this other video with my friends Rel and Henry about 12 or 13 years ago called A Brief History of John Baldessari.
In 100 years, John Baldessari suspects he will be best remembered as...
Oh, the guy that put dots over people's faces.
It was a video actually that Casey saw and was like, hey, you want to make some stuff with me too? And we were under the gun to finish it, and it was premiering. It was going to play at the LACMA, LA County Museum of Art, at their Art and Film Gala, and it was honoring Clint Eastwood and John Baldessari. And everyone knows who Clint Eastwood was. But they needed like a little film just to kind of bring everyone a little up to date on who John Baldessari was. They did this interview with John, and he gave them a really bad interview in that he like kind of was annoyed. Very sparse, terse words.
John Baldessari's name is internationally recognized.
Cool.
We had like 2 weeks to put this together, and I was like coming apart at the seams. I was just like having a nervous breakdown when I was making it. We had all these little pieces, but it didn't cohere. And it was like, okay, well, it needs to go to the sound mix. I'll just do the sound. And then I'll just put the visuals on top of it. And then we sent it to sound without any, like with very little video on top of it. And then just populated the video. And that was an aha moment where it was like, oh, we can work that way.
You can tell the story with sound first and then figure out the right visuals that complement that story.
Yeah. I had this as a sound file.
With the music and everything.
Yeah, with the music and everything. I just kind of like, I played it for Kristen, who produced this with me. And I'm like, what does this make you think of? And she goes, I don't know, maybe like vaudeville kind of thing. I was like, great idea. We'll do Charlie Chaplin.
Wow, that's so weird. I mean, in a great way. Like what you're saying is you're starting with music and sound and words, that whole thing. That's the entry point. And then the visuals come after completely.
Yeah.
I bet that, of course, that changes everything that comes out of you as a whole package.
So whether it's on my feature or documentary stuff, like commercial stuff, there's always like a lot of black holes in all the versions that I'm sending to people. And it like throws people off. They're not used to it and they don't like it. And I don't like having to show it to them that way, but because deadlines are what they are, I have to. And I'm like, look, they're just black holes where I don't know what goes there. But it doesn't matter because it works. The underpinning works.
Let's talk about production for some of these shots here. The one that just immediately comes to mind is this beautiful shot on the boat here.
Yeah. I'm very proud of that shot.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
That's a children's playground in Santa Monica.
What?
Yeah, there's like a park on the beach in Santa Monica with this boat thing that I had my eye on for a long time because I would go running by it. And I was like, oh my God, there's like a great boat set. And I went in the Chaplin outfit, and LA's great because like the sky is blue. It's like a giant
blue
screen. So we shot it like that. There was like some palm trees here that we matted out. These are some like Pond 5 waves.
So it's just kind of just scrapbooked together.
Total scrapbook together.
And like with some kind of, there's some lovely fog too.
Yeah,
to
there's
give
some
it
fog.
some motion.
The ship is kind of like, tilting. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula.
I don't think I've seen it, no.
It's amazing. And it is a masterclass in like old school, like film effects.
Like practical
visual
effects.
Yeah. I love that aesthetic of that, old timey, old film, like very elaborate practical effects. And so I don't know, I was inspired by that and I wanted to do some cool stuff. All this other stuff was shot in my garage. This is all in my garage, which is what I love about LA.
With just a big black background or something?
With a black, a Duvetine background that we just put up. And then, you could also take that down. There would be a green screen. If you have a garage, you better have a green screen in there. And I invited my buddy Alex Gorosh over, who has helped me on numerous projects. I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want this like very simple visual effect of like this bottomless heart. And we just figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you are making these shots, is it like you have a day and you know exactly what you're going to shoot and you've mapped it out in a storyboard and so you just have to kind of scramble through the day? Or are you literally just doing shot by shot and taking the time you need to get the shots and without a lot of pre-production?
Yeah, virtually no pre-production. And that's not always the case, but with this, it was. I was also like, I made this project over the last 2.5 years in between doing other things that were more structured. So I made a documentary for HBO Max a couple years ago called 15 Minutes of Shame.
Yeah.
Monica Lewinsky executive produced it. But I left that being like, I don't even know if anyone saw it. Like, who knows? It's not like releasing something on YouTube where
you get feedback and it's immediate. And
the impact when people come up to me, they're talking to me about bookstores or they're talking to me about dicks. No one's talking to me about 15 Minutes of Shame. And I never thought that these videos would ever do well on YouTube.
Any of them?
No.
Beautiful. Love that. When you got this shot, did you know that that was what you were going to do to it?
Muối.
No. But I was just collecting B-roll. I love shooting B-roll. I just find it to be a meditation, like practice in and of itself. And I remember this shot because like it was right at dusk and the lights were coming on, and we shot it on like the Brooklyn Bridge Park, and I used to live there, so I'm very like familiar with this view.
It very much sets up the transition from the Charlie Chaplin mode to, it's like really a really nice way to kind of bridge that gap there.
So what's funny though is that in the radio edit, which is what I call that whatever pre-visual edit, I had the diegetic sound of the city come up before I even had this shot. So I knew that I would transition. I'm not trying to say I'm so great, but like I knew that that song and that moment would end, and there would have to be like a kind of a smoke clearing moment where we'd need to, okay, we got to sit down now. And so you'd want to go into some diegetic sound of like some city stuff, and then an interview starts.
And you call that bit the radio edit is just like the sound that you edit. That's your outline for the, okay, that's the radio edit.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I am in Brooklyn, New York, in Dumbo, and I'm going to visit an old friend of mine, Ben Goldhirsch.
Who am I and why am I here? Yeah, it's a question I ask every day.
Ben has somewhat of a superhero origin story.
When I was a senior in high school, my mother passed away. And I was like, wow, like death is a reality. Like this thing ends.
Okay. It's hard not to talk about the subject matter in this particular case and to think about the filmmaking. But this has got to be a different process now, right? Like are you going audio first still?
Well, the audio is so married to the visual. So when you make the radio edit pieces, the video comes with it. And so that creates its own thing. But I'm like, I've now been in situations where people want to do paper edits of interviews, and I really don't like that.
Paper edit là gì? Of film on paper first, full core, non-fiction filmmaking. Structuring a film on paper. First, pulling core from the transcript. Chưa clear lắm.
Only if you have like absolutely no time and you're like put in between a rock and a hard place would I think should you ever do that. I've cut a lot of interviews together over the years. When you ask people about their past, they start listing things off and they kind of go like this. But then if they see something over there, they're like, oh my God. Or they tell a joke and like they get louder. And their energy, but when they have to talk about something that's rote or that they've talked about a lot and they have a practice, they kind of have a canned response to it, they kind of talk like this. So I try to like not use any of that because it's boring. Someone saying something funny or coming out with a line or a joke, even if it's a non sequitur, will communicate who that person is.
So you're looking at not the words that they're saying, but the particular emotional response that they're having in that moment or whatever it is.
Yes. And I think that, and I've done this in other videos, like you could literally make the whole interview those non sequiturs and it totally works. You don't, I mean, sometimes you'll need to cover a certain topic. And the way to do that is to kind of surround that. If they drop energy to kind of talk about that one thing that you kind of need them to talk about, then you need to like kind of surround that moment with these other more exuberant moments so that you've earned that moment.
Ben started producing films that had a social impact, like The Messenger, which was nominated for 2 Academy Awards.
Okay, that little thing. That's a thing that you do a lot in your what's the look on your face
no,
for?
I do that.
But that's like a trademark thing. That like instantly feels like your voice as a filmmaker.
When I'm editing, doing the radio edit, it's like something needs to go there. I need to fill up dead space. And like it just is like, oh, that needs to go there to punctuate that moment.
One of the reasons it's so effective is because you like tell the story with the words, you're telling the story with the feeling, and then you're also telling the story with the sound. And it's like the same story coming at you from like all of the places. And it just really like it from an engagement perspective and also just from like an understanding perspective, it like increases my comprehension of the story. Maybe I'm being like very technical right now, but like there's no way I can watch that sequence and not get the story.
Yeah, when I was working with Casey a lot at the beginning, he would say to me, "Oh man, that's so pleasing. I want this to be the most pleasingly edited thing possible." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting that he sees it as pleasing. Like I never thought about that, but yeah, I guess it pleases me. It like it hits my buttons, and so I like hitting those buttons. But like when you're making music." And like you get to the end of a song, like how a musician decides like what that last note is. It's like does it end like a bump, bum, or is it like a fade out, or is it like is it an off note or something like that? That's something that you feel, right? You get to the end of it and you're like, oh, it needs this. It needs a little flourish at the end or not. And I think that you couldn't really do that until nonlinear editing. Right, like I started on Final Cut 1. All of a sudden I was like, this is the best video game I've ever played. Because I can like sit here and try different permutations of this until they click in to something and then you can feel your way around. And then this can go here. It's like it's puzzling. And then you're just like, oh yeah, this is the way the puzzle should come together.
That's what's maybe another thing that's characteristic about your work is the rhythm of it. The rhythm always feels like it makes sense. Like even the rhythm of the ding ding is like it's not ding ding, it's ding ding. Like that's a very intentional rhythm. And sometimes it matches the vocals, sometimes it matches the music, but when you use those sorts of moments, the rhythm always feels right to me. It always just feels like pleasing.
Everyone understands music, right? They might not understand the words. And if there's a way to kind of turn it all into music. And so you can make these crazy cuts that are not rational. You're like, it doesn't make any rational sense to cut from this thing to this thing. But because you're following a musical logic, you can get away with it.
Love that.
If our culture was oriented around performance, then theoretically high performers would be happy. And Ben has spent a long enough time in that world to tell me if that were true.
So that's actually still like a little rough. Like I'm still, as we sit here now, the thing hasn't come out yet. I still have like a few more days to to massage that. And I probably will.
Yeah. I'm just curious, when you say that, what sticks out to you as like, that's rough?
The rhythm of the money and the person hitting the golf ball, like one shot's really fast and the other one's slow, and like the relationship between them isn't quite as crisp.
If our culture was oriented around performance, If our culture was oriented around performance,
at some point you run out of time, and then you're like, it's fine. It's good enough.
Okay, so is that what happens with your work?
It has to, yes.
So you're done when you run out of time.
I've just found over the years, I'm very bad at holding myself to artificial deadlines. So what I'll do is I will create a real deadline. I have a screening. I've invited a lot of people to these screenings, and so now I have to finish it. So I'll paint myself into a corner, and then it's like, well, whatever's not fully done by that point, let it go.
At some point, you abandon it camp of finishing things.
Yes, but if you spoke to my wife or my assistant or any of my friends, they'd be like, you hang on for way too long.
So happiness started when life started. The starting point was dopamine. Dopamine creates motivation, primarily to find food. So whoever in evolution had more dopamine was finding more food, and that proliferated more.
So that definitely, now that I've heard you talk about the way you edit, that sequence definitely feels like audio first.
Definitely.
What are you looking through then? What catalog of music are you looking through to find songs?
It's my messy iTunes. Whether I'm driving or I'm walking down the street with my headphones, like I'll make a playlist that has kind of the general vibe of what I think. This happiness series kind of has like this like PBS 1980s like electronic like analog sound to it that I made a playlist of things, and I've also friends that are in bands, and I try to kind of stick to that stuff because I like working with my friends. It's also much easier to clear. But occasionally I'll totally fall in love with a track that I know I'll have to license, but it has to be special. Sometimes I'll just throw a track that I know I would have to license in there because I know it's the right vibe. It's like close to the right thing, and it's close enough that I'll be able to map the dialogue on top of it and then switch it out for something better.
When you edit on a piece of music, are you cutting ever on beat of that piece, or do you try to avoid that?
It's a good question. The answer is sometimes yes, but I don't go through and mark where the beats are and then try to cut on that. I don't know. I read this book early on that's kind of like a seminal book for all editors called it's Walter Murch's In the Blink of an Eye. Right.
I love that book.
It kind of changed my life. The way he would make an edit is he would basically like he would play the thing and then feel where the edit should be. And he would like do that, but he would like kind of do a dry run of that like 3 or 4 times. And like if he chose the same place 2 out of those 4 times or 3 out of those 4 times, he knew that that's where the edit should be.
And you have to feel the moment where you're going to cut. And at the appropriate moment, I would feel there.
Same. I mean,
then
same.
I would mark the film, and then I would run it again, and did that little mark seem to come at the right point for a cut.
And so I kind of follow that kind of gut logic. And sometimes it's on like the full note, and then sometimes it's on the when you're going double time.
Right.
If we talked about make it count, you know, if you're going to end up like going, you know, whatever, quadruple time or double time, once you start going faster, you can't
pull back.
You can't pull back.
Yeah. You have to go faster. You can't go slower.
Right. Or you can really lean into a moment where you're going to slow down.
Right.
But then you're going to have to own that.
Right. Makes sense.
In essence, I was hammering on dopamine and serotonin for years. I had to spend more and more time to get a little bit of a reward from these 2 neurotransmitters. I even decided to move to Boston and leave the family at home. That means oxytocin goes to 0. There were no friends at the time, no cannabinoids. There was, I think, no pleasure either. Let's leave the sex out for a second. Most probably not. And the very important thing to understand is that there is no chance of overfilling dopamine and serotonin to an amount that it overflows and it fills also cannabinoids, opioids, oxytocin. This is not possible.
I'm imagining your brain as he's saying that, imagining that sequence. When did you come up with that, and how did that happen?
When I started editing, I worked at this company called Good Magazine, and a lot of what we were doing were infographic videos, right? And so a lot of it is like there would be text on screen, or we're communicating an idea. How do you land an idea? It's like Inception. Like how do you make sure it goes in?
Yes.
Right? And part of it is like the musicality feeling right, and the words, and the way you get the audience to a place where you then like kind of lay the egg, or it's like you get them to a soft enough place, and then you drop the pearl. But you've got to like romance them, and you've got to seduce them, and you got to there's foreplay, and then there's the moment where you do the thing. And I knew I wanted to get to the point where those two test tubes overflow.
Ugh.
I had Axel's interview, and I put it on the music track, and this is the right emotion here, and it follows from the emotion we just came from, and here is how I'm going to break up his voice, because if I just let it go, then they have no rhythm to it, and you wouldn't feel it. So it's like, okay, and then in the places where I'm breaking up his voice, that's where there'll be this like kind of little duet between what he's saying, and then we're going to marry that to the metaphor. And then once he kind of lands his point, then we're going to go to the metaphor to land the metaphor. And so between the music, his kind of intellectual or very kind of scientific narration, and then the metaphor, the menage a trois of those three things like interweaving, like it makes it go in.
Yeah.
And by the way, I had a great editor kind of do a first pass of all of these episodes. I'll end up like reshaping a lot of stuff, but some of the stuff he did, a lot of it has stayed to the end. His name is Alex Oatsmith. He's a great editor.
How do you work with Alex? Is he learning your style? Is he anticipating your feedback and adjusting his style to feel like Max Joseph? Is he being Alex? Like, how are you guys working together to make this?
So my collaboration with Alex is very recent. It's only in the last few years. And when I first started editing, I was like, oh, everyone edits this way. But I kind of was like, I found through trial and error hiring editors where it's like, oh, this way of doing things is not as obvious to other people as it is to me. His editing style is similar. It's not the same. There are disparities, but it's similar enough that I can kind of take what he's done and make it work for me in fewer steps than someone else. What I started to do, and I'm still haven't fully gotten this to work either, but it's working better, is that I'll do the radio edit, and then I'll give the radio edit to an editor. And it's essentially like, fill this in.
Oh.
So now it's like I have the movements and the sections blocked out, and now it's just like, now you've got to populate it.
So it's like a Max Joseph narrative and a sort of structure that someone else has to like find the right puzzle pieces for the right moments.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's not how I worked with Alex. Alex actually took the raw material. I kind of gave him, just off the top of my head, I think that the flow of the chapter the flow of the information, like we should meet this person first, and they need to say this thing and lay this egg. And then once they lay that egg, then we kind of pivot and go somewhere else. And so I would kind of give him that, and he would put together these great sequences, and I would kind of like then chop them up and move this one here, this one there, maybe like, just move it around a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Great shot.
Our well-being is deeply relational. A huge part of our being is wired for social relationship. It's been constructed over few 100,000 years of existence. The family, the friendships, all of these have huge impacts on our ability to function. And so the lack of social relationships is very damaging to our biology itself.
Is that found footage mostly? Like, where are you getting all that?
The gift that keeps on giving, which is archive.org. The Prelinger library is a great. Most of it is public domain. That's also why I like classical music so much. It's cheap. So is that stock footage, and it also has like there's an emotional nostalgia element to it. It's not super digital and clean, and like I don't like using Pond 5 or any of those or Getty
Pond 5?
too much. I'd rather find other things if I can't film it myself.
That also seems like a piece of your style. I don't know. I would call it like a 50s and 60s. It's not nostalgia, but it's like a standing on the shoulders of giants, or like homage to that era of culture, filmmaking, storytelling. There's something about a lot of your work that like acknowledges that period of history in a way. Maybe it's because of that footage or the stuff that I've seen, but it just feels like it's a piece of your voice as an artist.
I mean, like I really like DJ Shadow, and I like Wu-Tang Clan, and I like these. I was really into trip hop in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and they all were really great They sampled, Moby's Play album. Like there's something about that aesthetic that I do find like alluring, but I also like the idea of like playing off of it and remixing it.
Max, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks
and
for
doing this
having
with
me.
us. This is awesome. I'm so excited.
Thanks for having me.
This series is
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, no, it was great.
Thú vị. Digital Spaghetti à? Mình có nên sub kênh này không nhỉ? Đây này mình cũng biết là có một vài kênh, một vài clip mà mình muốn xem được trước rồi. Đây là phần phân tích à? Đây với cái clip này khá thú vị này, tên không phải tên mà là không phải clip này, clip ở đây. Ok, rồi cái này à? Cái này mình sẽ cân nhắc. Mình xem luôn này, bây giờ được 43 phút. Xem cái này rồi xem đấy. Ok. Theo lịch, theo plan này là mình sẽ xem clip Happiness này đúng không? Ủa cái này mình xem rồi chứ à? Happiness này mình xem rồi mà.
Second on the World Happiness Report.
It's about like in the dark and there's no one else.
The kind of happiness in quotes that we might be used to.
Chưa xem mà cái mình xem là
It's a
cái
much calmer, subdued kind of happiness.
hả? À, có mấy cái đây lần trước mình xem là xem cái này chưa xem này, và cái này là đang premiere luôn á, đỉnh thật. Thôi được rồi, mình xem cái này đi, rồi buổi sau sẽ xem hai cái happiness vừa nãy. Make sense.
The editing here is like what really makes this pop.
Yes, it's so much.
Hey everybody, welcome to this bonus episode of Digital Spaghetti. About a month ago, we released a video breaking down Casey Neistat's iconic classic, Make It Count. And there were a lot of comments pointing out that we did not give credit to the editor of that video, Max Joseph, somehow. So we're bringing on credit to the editor of that video, Max Joseph.
Từ còn hồi cách đây khoảng mười mấy năm mà, 20 năm, có khi 20 năm còn đến đấy, là không, 10 mấy năm thôi, là đã tóc bạc này, tóc bạch kim này.
somehow. So we're bringing on Max to set the record straight and talk about some of our speculation in the video. Please bring in Casey or Max to talk about the process. I love your speculation, but it would be fun to see if it tracks with reality. Justin, it's your lucky day. We have Max Joseph himself here to right some of our wrongs.
Guys, I'm so grateful. Not in my wildest dreams would I imagine that there would be people on YouTube that would stick up for me and raise their hand and say, hey, wait a minute. You know, you're not giving this person credit. I made this video with Casey, I think 12 years ago. And I've just, you know, I get nice flowers for this video, but you know, I'm also used to watching Casey get all the flowers for this video. And so this is very heartwarming and feels very good. So thank you, Justin Lind, Stuart Spicer, and Hema.
We've got our episode. You've put some markers on here. What I'd like to do is let's watch these areas, and I want to hear, what did we get right? What did we get wrong? Where are we full of shit? Like, you know, school us here. This is us speculating, and here's the chance we get to actually see if the speculation holds.
This is like, you know, like when you're in an English class in high school and like you're like reading into this paragraph and you wish you could bring the author in and be like, are we right or not?
And now I got the author.
One of the authors.
One of the authors.
Let's acknowledge that Casey is amazing.
Of course.
And is a great filmmaker and had a lot to do with this, obviously.
We spent 45 minutes acknowledging
that's right. Casey already got credit, so fuck him. Let's go into this. Okay.
Not to stop it so soon. The other thing I want to point out is that this is a sponsored video.
Yeah.
The fact that this is so popular, so engaging, and it's an ad is such a feat in itself.
I also love it's so slow. The whole first bit, no sound, no music. It's like an unboxing video with some jump cuts. No talking, no dialogue. He just takes out a wristband.
Casey called me on my 30th birthday, and I was in LA.
42 tuổi à? Thế là Sim 42 tuổi là kém mình, nhiều hơn mình 8 tuổi. Thế là cũng xem Casey mình nhớ không nhầm là 83. Casey Neistat H 43 à. Rồi Max Joseph H kém Casey 1 tuổi. Wow. Hơn mình 11 tuổi. 12 năm trước đã làm clip này rồi. Cày thực sự.
And he said, I want to make this Nike video where we go around the world. Are you interested? I'm leaving like in 2 days. So I was like, yeah, I'm down. I flew to New York, got to his office straight from the airport. We had lunch, and then we went back to the airport and left. And we forgot the actual band. That's right. So in all of these shots where he's running around the world, he's not wearing the product. When we first showed that to Nike, we showed them the first cut, there was no band. And they're like, guys, we like the video, but like, you know, where's the product? So Casey shot it. I was already in LA editing. So he shot this part where he like
Dạo này mình cũng thấy màu của Casey này.
Opens it up, takes the thing out and runs. And that's the only time you see the product.
In the entire video.
So we already had the video basically edited. So that's kind of why it doesn't have music, why like the video really starts with the text scroll.
Yeah.
So he literally just shot that front part and we just like plopped it on the front.
And when you did that, did it work, or did you think, it really should have music, but we're gonna leave the music, like we don't have time?
No, it worked.
It worked. Okay.
It worked. It worked because it also like we knew that we wanted him to like start the run. We started flying before we shot the front part where he like leaves his office. So we knew we needed to do that anyway. And we knew we wanted to do that before the credit roll, and the credit roll didn't start with music. So it was kind of cool to have this kind of dead space silence where you're just like, you know, it's a little disorienting, like you're kind of dropped in the middle of this thing. No one's explaining what's going on. And then the credit scroll comes on and we explain like what's going on.
It's still a bold choice to not have any music there. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of emptiness at the beginning of the video, but it's almost like there's something that's really gutsy about it because it makes you think like the rest of this video must be really good if they're going to start with this sequence. I don't know. It's anticipatory.
Yeah, right. It's anticipatory.
Yeah.
We knew what was coming and we had already built it. And so it was like, well, we're not going to mess with the edit at that point.
Yeah.
So we'll pay unto Caesar here.
Right.
We'll give Nike what they want, and then we'll get our video.
Cool. I think he's really good at understanding when to use music. Mm-hmm. And so right as you're reading this, instead of making their movie, I spent the entire budget traveling around the world. Literally, when I get to the phrase traveling around the world, boom, dum, boom, dum, boom, dum, dum, we like, and it's right when I'm reading that in my mind. The millisecond that music comes in is so intentional. It comes in at exactly the right moment to juice our anticipation and excitement. I'm curious about my speculation there around getting to the phrase travel around the world.
Okay, so I think I'll take it.
Okay.
But that wasn't it. It was less about the words again. It was more about the rhythm. It was like, how fast is this scroll going? My rule is that I read every word out loud quickly. And then it's just like watching that a cajillion times. It's like, well, where should the song come in? It wasn't purposefully around traveling around the world, but I knew that I wanted it to come in.
Instead of making their movie, I spent the entire budget traveling around the world.
The way the song, like the next part of the song starts, like where that starts, if you back it up, like where I wanted it to start, like that's where it just needs to start in the credits.
Yeah.
So it was just a timing rhythm thing.
Makes sense.
So thank you, but not intentional.
Yeah, great.
We'll definitely make this flight, but we're cutting it close. So far the trip is off to a fairly irresponsible start.
As I tend to do, I was sitting on this track for a long time. This was going to be the end song of my first feature film. Like I knew how great this song was. I knew I wanted to make something to it. Casey had nothing to do with this song. And we had just come out of Victoria Falls, and we'd already spent like 5 days traveling. And I was like, God, I hate myself because I've been saving this song for something, but I think it might be perfect for this video. And I played it for Casey. He's like, it needs to be this song. And I was like, fuck, I'm going to give you this song as a gift, but just, it was mine and I'm giving it to you. That's where the song came from.
Do you write out a paragraph of what you're going to say?
Ever.
As he's traveling, he knows, okay, maybe.
Song came from.
Do you write out a paragraph of what you're going to say?
Ever.
As he's traveling, he knows, okay, maybe thematically I want to get this shot. I could do all these match cuts.
Right.
But yeah, it's really all very natural and candid.
She's right. We had a very vague idea of, oh yeah, we'll do this left to right thing. We did a lot of other things too. We did a couple things where he like jumped over the camera. Another thing we did was like everywhere we went, I was kind of like filming Casey, and I'd be like, Casey, turn around. Like, Casey, where are we? Like I would kind of like give him some prompts, knowing that, if we'll cut all the times.
So there's this match cut of him turning his head.
Yes.
There. See that?
Yes. Let's watch that. That's beautiful.
See,
Good
that
point.
has to be, I don't know, I don't think that was planned. That's just good editing.
Planned.
I'm guessing he's only.
But it was planned.
It was planned.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, the magic trick is that we did a ton of those things, and then we only showed a couple of them.
That worked.
That worked.
The ones where he was in the same part of the frame.
There are some great outtakes of this video. There are great sequences that like are great unto themselves, but they just didn't work in the overall flow. They were babies we had to kill. So, but yeah, this was one that we kept in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
great.
Intentional.
Great.
Intentional.
Classic Indiana Jones shot.
The classic Indiana Jones shot. I'd seen Casey use maps before in other videos, but originally that wasn't a part of this. Part of where I was at when I was editing this, I had a very clear notion of what makes a good viral video. And part of it is you need to know, like, you have the beginning to create your engine, right? Like, and you can take forever to wind that clock to build that engine. But then once the gun goes off, I'm mixing metaphors here, but once like you've said it, then the audience has to kind of know, okay, I know what this video is now going to be, and I know that the video is going to be over when fill in the blank. And if they know that, then they're not going to be looking at the progress bar, because they'll feel secure. They'll feel like they're being held. Oh, this video is going to be over once they go all the way around the world. And if there's like a visual to kind of show the progress bar, which is the map, then there will be no anxiety on the part of the viewer as to when is this going to be over? What, because that's what you don't want.
You're setting up a really clear goal, essentially, and you check in on that goal throughout the course of the video, so you get a sense of how close you are to achieving it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And everything's going left to right.
Right.
He's moving left to right. The map is left to right. And you know that the video ends by the time the marker comes back to New York.
Yep. This shot is so epic.
Wow. Jeez.
Music cuts. So much anticipation.
Good editing.
Sound. So good.
You think that's wind and water? And he really
It interrupts it, yeah.
He really holds that drop. So I was looking at, what is that a boat?
It's like a sunken house.
So this is one of my bag of tricks. I've done a lot of montage editing before this. If you want to get out of the song for a second, you need a loud noise, or like something needs to break it. Like if a window breaks or something, then you can slam cut the music out. And we wanted the anticipation. There was this very long moment where he's jumping through the air, and it was way more dramatic to play that with no sound than with sound. And so the rocks falling into the water was like a perfect spot to yank the music out.
Yep.
And this was a discovery I had. So I edited this. This probably took like 2 months of like daily editing, but it was really fun. And while I was like editing this, I had some idea that like I wanted to get that shot of that cruise liner that drowned, or like it capsized. It was a big story at the time that now no one really remembers. But I was like, oh my God, the sound on this shot, I needed like a water sound to go over this. And I was like, oh, we should just pull it from this shot. And I was like, oh man. And this is one of those moments where the musical logic trumps causal rational logic.
Right.
Because it sounded the same, because the sound of the water and the wind was exactly the same.
It wasn't wind, it was water.
It was water. And so it allowed us to just cut seamlessly, even though it's like such a weird cut and you're interrupting him falling through, falling through the air. It feels okay. You can make that cut because it's the same sound underneath. because your brain's okay with it because it's the sound. I actually used that technique in my feature, like later. Zac Efron is taking a shower at one point, and he's kind of like waking up to the sounds of the world around him, and the sound of the shower is actually the sound of the ocean, and then the next cut is the ocean, and it
blends seamlessly.
It's a seamless blend.
That reminds me of the director of Seabiscuit,
Gary Ross.
I remember seeing an interview with him. He talked about how the truth doesn't matter when he's making a film. It's the emotional truth that he's looking for. In the story, in the sound, in the video, he doesn't care about the truth. He cares about the emotional truth. That has always stuck with me with filmmaking. This is a perfect example of that. It's like, it doesn't matter that wasn't the sound as Casey was falling. It's the emotional truth of that moment, and so it makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Kubrick, especially when he's talking about 2001, he's like, it's a musical experience. It's like you watch it the way you would watch a symphony. Like that's how it makes sense. It's not supposed to make rational sense. You're just supposed to feel your way through it. And I don't know. I mean, this is not 2001.
I mean, this is a piece of internet culture that this influenced a decade of videos that came after it. I'm still influencing videos that are coming now.
What's crazy is that when we were making this, we were both very aware and very excited about the potential and the future of web video. Casey had recently come back to YouTube. He had done his HBO show. He had just started making films on his own. He had just done Bike Lanes, which was kind of his first big YouTube viral video. That was like 2 or 3 months before this.
Often there are obstructions that keep you from properly riding in the bike lane.
We did 2 other Nike videos before this, and then we did this one. And the whole trip, we were just talking about this new language, this new world where you can break all these rules and do all these things. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because that's the vibe, that's the headspace that we were in. And all of that optimism and excitement was totally went into this video. We wanted this to be this kind of a pure energy that just shot out into the world. And so it was very much, it was meant to do, what it did.
Yeah. It's so rare that you set out to do something like that and it actually works. You know what I mean? To that scale.
When you're working, that's what's so fun about working with Casey. It's like working with a movie star. You know that if you make something good on your own, maybe people find it, maybe they don't. You make something good with a movie star where they already have all this attention on them. And Casey's more than a movie star in some ways, because he's a creator himself. But it was a way to deliver this it's like a Trojan horse. It's a way to deliver this giant payload into the zeitgeist. And that that's always the great opportunity when working with Casey.
I feel like this video influenced Casey's editing. You can see the influence happening both ways, I guess is what I'm pointing out. A lot of his style is this. The text, a lot of it seems to be influenced by how you guys are working together and your voices just kind of joining in those conversations that you were having at the time. It really feels like it came out of that moment.
It was really exciting.
Yeah.
Seeing what happened when it came out was really exciting. Seeing how many people's it touched, and how, I don't know, the fact that we're here talking about this is still, it's crazy. It's a gift. So thanks for having me on, and thanks to the commenters for sticking up for the editor.
Kia. Rồi, hôm nay live đến đây thôi. Rồi đúng rồi. Từ đến giờ không có tiếng nhạc. Rồi, hẹn gặp lại vào thứ 6 xem 2 tập Happiness của Max Joseph. Hey, bye bye.